more system power in order to handle. So if you got a 1070 Ti, and I'm just using this as a visual representation, and you're like, all right, I have this card, I want to buy another card to drop in and give me some two-way SLI goodness. These are GTX 460s in case you guys are wondering, but I would not have recommended SLIing these two GPUs together back in the day, and I would not recommend SLIing your 1070 Ti right now either. A few different reasons for this. One, SLI is not supported by a lot of different games, so you might buy this extra card, drop it into your system, increase your power usage, increase your thermal output, and then you might play games that actually don't get any benefit at all from it. There are even some games where the performance drops when you enable SLI, but your mileage may vary on that, and it varies from game to game. There are some games that do take advantage of it, so you should double check if your favorite game or games takes advantage of SLI or benefits from it, in which case the answer might change slightly. Back to the point though, a second graphics card is again going to add heat to your system, going to add power draw to your system, may or may not actually provide a benefit when gaming. And when you're talking about gaming and streaming at the same time, yes, there is the option, depending on the software you're using, like OBS, to assign a second graphics card to specifically handle the streaming, but there are better solutions for that available. So my recommendation would be to sell your 1070 Ti, or plan to sell it, and instead replace it with an RTX series graphics card. I'd say for a reasonable upgrade from your 1070 Ti, you'd be looking at spending $400 to $500. And for that, you can get an RTX 2070 or an RTX 2070 Super. The reason I recommend that is because the NVENC encoder in those newer 2000 series RTX cards is really, really good. You're using an i7 7700K. You have two options for gaming and streaming at the same time, which is to have software encoding, which is going to be bad with your 7700K because you've only got 4 cores and 8 threads, and it's going to tank your gaming performance at the same time. Or you can do hardware encoding along with OBS, and that might be something to try out from the get-go with your 1070 Ti before you do an upgrade, because your 1070 Ti does have an H.264 encoder in it. It's just that the newer encoder in the RTX cards is simply better. So if you're going to upgrade, I would say don't go the SLI route. Get a single good graphics card and sell or otherwise repurpose your existing graphics card. And then I'd say on the CPU side, you're actually just fine right now as long as you have a hardware encoding solution for your gaming and streaming at the same time. So try hardware encoding on the 1070 Ti, and if it's still not doing what you want it, then upgrade to an RTX 2070 or better. Use the NVENC encoder there, and I would point you towards EPOSVox's setup guides on how to get that up and running more optimally, because he has done more videos on that than I have. Moving on though, here's a question from Nick Thorne. Probing Paul question: as a start-out YouTuber, I noticed that you have hard cuts during your answers. I wondered how much footage you usually take to get the final 12 to 13 minute video for Probing Paul videos. This is an interesting question for me because it's one that I've wondered if people wonder about before, if that makes sense. Short answer here is I usually end up with anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes of raw footage for my Probing Paul recordings. I usually sit here and record it all beginning to end, but sometimes I say things wrong and mispronounce myself, or I just say something and I'm like, wait, that was stupid. I should say that more differently or more betterly. I use different wordies for the part where I communicate. And my wonderful editor Joe goes in and very quickly chops out all the little bits where I misspoke or seemed like I didn't know what I was talking about, and you end up with hopefully a much more concise video. Of course, he is also at liberty to leave stuff in when I screw up, and of course, he's always at liberty to leave stuff in when I screw up, and then I do the final cut on it, and I decide, wait, I look too silly there, I'm gonna remove it. Or often, I usually just leave it in. I don't care if I don't look like I know what I'm doing up here. Since you mentioned that you're starting out on YouTube though, I will say that especially for a newer YouTuber that doesn't have an established audience retention is very important, and people get bored very easily. So it's often worth your while to spend the extra time to go in there, cut out the dead time, cut out those little bits just to keep things rolling and moving along more quickly so people don't lose interest. Case in point, thanks for your question, Nick. Let's move on. Here's a question from Tony Perez. Hey Paul, first time questioner, first time builder. My question is, I built my PC right before the new Ryzen CPUs, shortly after the new GPUs came out. So he's got a 2700X and a 1080 Ti. Is it still comparable to newest gen hardware? And is there an upgrade path really worth taking? Tony, as a first-time builder, let me reassure you, you are not alone by any stretch. And this is sort of the constant question that builders ask themselves before they're about to build a system, and then after they build a system, because there's always new stuff coming out in the future. Whether it's a month away or 3 months away or 6 months away, there's going to be better hardware that launches that's going to be better than what you've already got. And even if you built the highest end, best gaming system possible, chances are it's not going to stay that way. My advice here is just to stay cognizant and aware of the fact that if you're following channels like mine, you're constantly being shown the newest stuff, and there's a reason why manufacturers like to send me hardware to show to you guys. I try to show it to you guys to say, like, look, here's what's good and what's bad, and make an informed decision. Manufacturers know that just by having that stuff there and you guys being aware of it, puts that little thought in your mind that, like, oh,
I had the 2700X, but now the 3000 series is out. I had a 1080 Ti, but now the RTX cards are out.
Compare that to the real world difference in performance between what you bought, a couple years ago and what's available now for roughly the same price, and you might be looking at, a 3% improvement or a 7% improvement, and it's going to depend on what game you're playing and what resolution you're at, and if you're testing the CPU or the GPU. Short answer though for you, Tony, you have a 2700X and a 1080 Ti. Those are both really nice products still, the CPU and the GPU. Your 1080 Ti still has 11 gigs of VRAM. Even people buying the newest 2080 Supers are still getting 8 gigs. You may or may not be using all that VRAM, but my point is that you have a good setup, you should be satisfied where you're at, and you are in a position still where you've got 3000 series AMD CPUs available right now for AM4 sockets, but we're told there's 4000 series CPUs coming out as well that will slot into AM4 motherboards. That's still in the future and yet to be confirmed and everything, but we'll find out, and again, you're totally good with what you've got right now. Woes Edis says, hey Paul, believe you misunderstood the first question. Now this is a follow-up from last month, by the way. The person was wondering how to transfer an operating system like Windows 10 from their SSD to the new NVMe SSD without having to do a fresh install and or buy a new key. I'm pulling this up because there were actually quite a few comments from last month's video about my recommendations when it comes to doing an in-place upgrade of a Windows installation. And the question was, they were moving from a SATA SSD to an NVMe SSD, and my answer to them was reformat. Reformat and reinstall on the new NVMe SSD. And that's pretty much always my recommendation when people ask about, hey, I got a new drive, a new SSD or whatever, what should I do to move my existing stuff over onto it? There's a couple reasons for that. One is that I feel that being comfortable with reformatting your system is something to be good and used to, and knowing the stuff that you need to pull off of it really quick to wipe it and redo it, it becomes very freeing in a lot of ways, and you don't feel like you're tied to some existing operating system install that you've had installed for several years and isn't quite as peppy as it used to be. A format and a clean reinstall is just a nice thing to do every so often for your system. The second thing is, when I'm providing you guys with advice, I'm providing advice for a wide array of people, lots of different people versus just the specific person who asked the question. And with that in mind, a reformat and reinstall is the universal answer to that question, because anyone should be able to use that in order to solve the problem that this user was having. Yes, there are other ways to do it. Clonezilla was brought up as a solution by quite a few people. I've used Clonezilla, but it's been years since I've done it, so I was just not in a comfortable position to say, here, use this software to do what you need to do, because I don't want to give anyone advice that would lead them to be more confused or to have any problems. That said, the answer that I would give to someone who's like, no, I need to migrate, I cannot do a clean install, would be to make sure that the new NVMe SSD that you buy has data migration software that's based on a Cronus True Image. And that's actually quite a few of them. So the newest Samsung SSDs, for example, they have their own software suite, and you install it and then it's got a migration function there. The migration function is just a Cronus True Image. It's just they've tied it into their software. It recognizes your hardware, so it'll only work with specific hardware. But that will make sure that you get your data from the old drive to the new drive, that everything still works the way it should. And even in a situation where you're updating from an older hard drive to a newer SSD, that should work for you as well. So hopefully that's a better answer for anyone who is like, I don't like that you're just telling people to reformat and reinstall. But everyone reformat and reinstall your operating system right now. Next question from Smoky Mountain Technologies. Hey Paul, longtime watcher, love the mix of content, especially the vlogs. They give us some behind the scenes looks and knowledge on things about your content we otherwise wouldn't know. I'm glad about that, because I have had no choice but to do vlogs in the past few months. But that said, what lens would you recommend for a GH5 to someone who's getting started with videography, especially emphasizing in product B-roll as well as just all-around good video? Let me say that I am not a camera expert by any means. I have a solution that works really well for me, and so I have stuck with it for the past, I don't know, 2-3 years at least. You said you have a GH5 though. I have a GH5, so I am comfortable recommending you the solution that I am currently using. That said, it's not necessarily inexpensive, but I really regularly get positive comments and people saying that my videos look really nice. Even these that I'm not even recording on the camera. I'm capturing this video directly to my system using OBS, which is also a great solution. But anyway, if you've got a GH5 and you have a micro 4/3 lens mount, the lens that I'm actually using is a Sigma 18-35 f1.8 art lens. So this art is, that's why it's got a really like shallow depth of field and it looks very artsy, and like if I have something out of focus in the background like lights or whatever, it looks really cool. This is specifically for Canon EF mounts, and I got this lens when I still had a Canon camera with an EF mount. What I am using is this lens and then this adapter, which is made by Metabones. It's a Canon EF, so the EF mounts on one side, to micro 4/3 on the camera side, and it's also a speed booster, so it gives you more f-stop range. Purchasing both of those together is going to run you about $1,300-ish right now, but it's a really nice setup. It gives you a really clean, finished look. That's what I've been using, and if you're in the market to buy something, maybe consider it. But again, this setup that I'm using is already 2-3+ years old now. But take a look at the new stuff that's come out in the interim, because I know there's nicer cameras like the A7 III from Sony that was pretty nice. I had the lens mount even wrong here when I was speculating about that. It's a Panasonic body micro 4/3 mount. Like I said, I'm not a camera expert by any stretch. But anyway, I will link those in the video's description if you want to check them out. Just a couple more questions. David Montaigne asks, hey Paul, you've been probed many times now. Have any of the probings been done by aliens? Obviously, when it comes to probing, that's where your mind goes. You know, that is the preferred method of probing by aliens, or so I am told. I don't remember very specifically, it's kind of hazy, but I will point this out, just by way of coincidence. You asked me this question, and at the same time the Pentagon has released a bunch of unidentified flying object videos. Very scary. I have no explanation for this, or for my continued probings, or any of it, but I just wanted to, you know, say both of those things exist at the same time. Correlation or causation? I don't know. Finally, B6S4 Shelter said, hey Paul, I have a problem with my Paul's Hardware pint glass. It's empty every 20 minutes I use it. I think it's defective. Can I get an RMA? Download more RAM, that's obviously an option. I actually responded to this because it was a comment from last month. And that if you could send me some of the beverage that you are drinking, I could try it out myself and see if maybe that might be a problem that I encounter as well. But I am kind of impressed because this is an imperial pint glass, which means it's better because it's a 20-ounce pint glass rather than those piddly little 16-ounce pint glasses that a lot of people use. So that means you're consuming your beverage at a rate of 1 ounce per minute, which is good because it's really nice, easy math to do, but also fairly impressive, I would say. So if you guys are interested in these pint glasses, and not that I'm plugging my store too much in this episode, but paulshardware.net is where you can buy super sweet merch, pint glasses, shirts like this one, featuring, of course, the Paul's Hardware thumbscrew logo for the most part. And then, of course, if you do want to send me frosty beverages or just anything for me and Kyle to check out when we do our live show on Tuesday evenings, send them to Paul's Hardware, P.O. Box 4325, Diamond Bar, California 91765, and that is down in this video's description as well. Speaking of the video's description, go down there and check it out for links to some stuff, and also the comments section is where you should leave me questions if you want me to answer them next month in May. May's next? Yeah. That's all for this one though, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.